The alien armada moved silently through the cold expanse of space, its ships cutting through the stars with an unnatural precision, each vessel a marvel of technology and power designed for one singular purpose: to conquer and dominate the beings of lesser worlds. They were from a distant galaxy, where conquest was as natural as breathing to them. Their fleet had crushed countless civilizations, and now they had set their sights on a new star system, a small, unremarkable system that seemed to pose no challenge at all. It had no great military presence, no advanced technologies, and no defenses of note. As the fleet approached the outer rim of the system, they prepared for the usual course of action. They would scan the planet below, issue demands of surrender, and then take what they wanted. They had done this 1,000 times before, and each time it had gone smoothly, but something was different this time. Something they could not quite place. It started with the small speck of a ship that appeared on their scanners, a single human warship, its signature a faint blip in the vast nothingness of space to them. It seemed like an afterthought, no more than a fleck of dust in the wind, yet it lingered in their path, as if it had been waiting for them. The human vessel was a far cry from the great fleets the aliens had crushed before. It was an ancient relic of a long-forgotten war, its design out of date, and its weapons seemingly underpowered compared to the alien armada's technology. Yet there it was, the U.S. Valhalla, standing alone against the entire fleet. The alien commanders had seen ships like it before, ships that had long since been wiped from the galaxy's memory, and they had no fear of it. Its insignificance was apparent to them, and so they chose to ignore it, at first dismissing it as little more than a last-ditch effort to delay the inevitable. But as the fleet continued their approach, they began to feel an odd sensation, a sense of unease. They had expected the humans to flee or submit, but the Valhalla didn't do either. It simply waited. It had no reinforcements, no backup, and no reason to stand its ground, yet still it waited, and that small spark of defiance sparked a question in the alien commanders' minds. Who were these humans? What was this strange ship, and why was it not afraid? The lead alien commander gazed at the ship through the view screen. His alien eyes narrowed, and he reached out to issue the order to initiate their standard protocol: demand the humans surrender in the usual manner, and then proceed with the invasion. But as he opened his mouth to speak, something stopped him. The silence of the situation unnerved him. There was no radio chatter, no sign of fear, no desperate pleas, no sign of the usual human behavior they had encountered in previous encounters. This was different. This was something unknown, and that feeling gnawed at him. He glanced once more at the human ship. It sat there silent like a stone in the void, watching them, with a sense of stillness that suggested it was not what it seemed. A flicker of doubt passed through his mind before he quickly pushed it aside, but the seed of uncertainty had been planted, and it grew slowly in the dark corners of his mind. The USS Valhalla was a ship like no other. It had not been built for the sake of exploration or trade. It had been forged in the fires of war, a war humanity had thought it could never win but had somehow survived. It was a relic from Earth's darkest days, a time when human civilization had been on the brink of extinction, fighting against an overwhelming enemy with weapons and technology that had been barely enough to keep them alive. Each ship in their fleet had been designed for a single-purpose: survival, and the Valhalla had survived it all. It was battered, scared, and old, but it was a living testament to human resilience. The ship itself was a marvel of what humanity could achieve when pushed to the brink. It was far from perfect. Its armor was worn, its systems outdated, but it had something that the alien fleet could never understand. It had a soul. It had been through battles no other ship in the galaxy could comprehend. It had been to the edges of existence, and back it had carried humanity's last hope, and had never faltered. And its crew were more than just soldiers. They were survivors, veterans who had lived through wars that had wiped entire civilizations from the map. They knew how to fight in ways that no algorithm or advanced technology could predict. Captain Lysandra Kane stood at the helm of the Valhalla, her face grim yet focused. She was a woman who had seen death up close many times and had learned to embrace it with calm resolve. Her crew was loyal and battle-hardened. Each one of them had faced unimaginable horrors and had come out the other side scared but stronger. They were not just soldiers. They were survivors of humanity's final conflict, the war against the Xarlok, a ruthless alien race that had nearly wiped out humanity in the span of a few short years. The Valhalla had been humanity's last stand during those days. Its crew had been the last line of defense. And even now, after all these years, the ship carried the weight of that history. Captain Kane knew her ship's reputation well. It was a symbol of human endurance, a symbol that no matter how outnumbered or outgunned humanity could always find a way to fight back. That reputation had spread across the galaxy like wildfire, and even the alien fleets had heard of it. They knew that the humans had fought the Xarloc to a standstill against overwhelming odds, and they knew that the Valhalla had played a central role in that victory. But the aliens didn't know the full extent of what they were up against. They had never fought humans who had been pushed to the edge of extinction and had survived. They had never fought humans who had made it their mission to never surrender, no matter what the cost. The Valhalla wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's refusal to bow to any enemy, no matter how powerful or numerous. It was a reminder to all that the human spirit could not be crushed. As Captain Kane watched the alien fleet approach, she felt no fear, only a cold calm. She had faced worse odds before and come out victorious. She knew her crew felt the same. There was no doubt in their minds that they would stand their ground. No matter how many ships the aliens had, no matter how advanced their technology was, they would fight, and they would make sure the galaxy knew that humanity would never be an easy target again. As the alien armada drew closer, the tension aboard the Valhalla was palpable. The crew moved with practiced precision. As Captain Lysandra Kane stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the approaching fleet, there was no fear in her expression, only focus and determination. The crew had all heard the rumors of the alien armada's reputation. They had faced impossible odds before, but this felt different. This wasn't just any fleet. This was an overwhelming force that had wiped out entire civilizations. In an instant, they had never faced anything like this. But they would not run, they would not yield. On the bridge of the alien command ship, the lead commander watched as the human vessel remained in place. Their sensors could not penetrate the Valhalla's outdated but still formidable defenses. They could tell it was preparing to fight, but there was no sign of the kind of panic that would normally accompany such a situation. It was as if the human ship had accepted its fate already and had no intention of fleeing. This unsettled the commander, who had seen countless battles but had never encountered such a calm refusal to surrender. The alien fleet leader issued an order to send a transmission to the Valhalla. It was standard protocol. They would demand that the humans submit to the armadas. Well, they had done it countless times before, and it had always been successful. The human response would be one of fear, or at least of negotiation. They would beg for their lives, and the aliens would take the system with ease. But when the transmission was sent, it was met with a cold silence. The commander frowned, a sense of unease settling in their gut. They repeated the transmission, but again no response came. The Valhalla simply sat there like a rock in space, unmoving and unresponsive. It was strange, almost as if the human crew had already resigned themselves to their fate, or were waiting for something the commander could not understand. After a moment of hesitation, Captain Kane finally issued an order through the communication channels. She didn't want to waste time on words, but this was a formality. They needed to know that they had no intentions of giving up. This is Captain Lysandra Kane of the Us is Valhalla. We do not surrender, and we do not negotiate. Our fate is our own. The alien commander's eyes narrowed. He had expected a different response, but there was no turning back now. This was war, and the humans had made their position clear without any fear or hesitation. The alien commander opened his mouth and ordered the fleet to proceed with the invasion. They would show the humans what true power looked like and break them within moments. The Valhalla would be nothing more than a burning wreck. But as the fleet moved forward, something unsettling passed through the mind of the commander. They had underestimated humanity before, but there was something different about this human ship and its crew. They could feel it. The human vessel was not afraid. It did not cower in the face of superior strength, and that made it all the more dangerous. As the Armada drew even closer, the captain of the Valhalla gave a small nod to her crew. She knew they were ready for what was about to come, and she wasn't about to let her ship fall without a fight they had survived too much to die in. Now, not at the hands of these invaders, they would make the aliens regret every second they had spent approaching. The silence that followed the transmission was shattered by the sudden eruption of weapons fire from the Valhalla. Captain Lysandra Kane didn't hesitate a single moment. Once the alien armada was within range, the human warship unleashed its first volley. The sharp crack of kinetic missiles tore through the void, followed by searing beams of energy that lit up the dark space between the two fleets. The alien ships had barely begun to adjust their formations when the first barrage struck with devastating force. The Valhalla's weapons were old by galactic standards, but they were finely tuned and designed for one thing: to break through any defense. The missiles slammed into the alien flagship's shields, first sending shockwaves rippling through the massive vessel. The alien shields flickered, but held for a moment before the next volley of fire collided with them, pushing them past their breaking point and causing the flagship to shudder in response. On the bridge of the alien command ship, the officers scrambled to assess the damage. Their systems were designed to withstand attacks far more powerful than this, but the Valhalla's shots were unlike anything they had faced before, each shot calculated with a deadly precision that left no room for error. The aliens were unprepared for the intensity of the human assault, their pride and overconfidence now faltering. The human crew didn't stop. The weapons fire was unrelenting. Each shot from the Valhalla was designed to inflict maximum damage. The enemy shields were no match for the combined power of the ship's weaponry. Even as the alien fleet returned fire, their beams of energy hitting the Valhalla's hull and shaking the ship violently. The crew barely flinched, their eyes locked on their screens as they continued to launch more missiles and energy blasts into the alien ships. One of the alien destroyers attempted to outmaneuver the Valhalla, closing the distance between them and firing at point-blank range, but the human ship responded with the speed and agility of a much younger vessel. It juked left, then right, evading the alien fire before launching a salvo of anti-ship missiles that tore through the alien destroyer's side. The resulting explosion sent debris flying into space as the ship was torn apart from within. The alien commanders could not understand what was happening. This human ship was more resilient than any they had ever encountered. Their weapons had failed to break the human defenses, and their attempts to outmaneuver the Valhalla were falling short. The alien fleet had never been confronted with such resistance. The humans were not fighting like any species they had encountered before. They weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting with a rage and a desperation that was almost beyond comprehension. The Valhalla took another hit, this one striking the forward shields and sending a ripple through the ship's power grid. But the crew didn't pause. They adapted their tactics, shifting the ship's positioning to compensate for the damage and launching a counterstrike that sent one of the alien dreadnoughts into a spiral as its engines detonated in a brilliant flash of light. The alien commanders were starting to panic. Their once confident fleet now staggered under the weight of the Valhalla's assault. They had assumed this would be an easy victory, but they had underestimated their enemy. They had underestimated humanity's will to fight. They had underestimated the fury of a species backed into a corner with nothing left to lose. And then it hit them, the realization that perhaps they had made a grave mistake. The Valhalla wasn't just a ship, it wasn't just a crew of soldiers. It was a reminder that humanity's strength was not in its technology, but in its refusal to break, no matter what the cost. As the battle stretched on, the void of space became a chaotic battlefield. Streaks of energy beams and the sharp explosions of destroyed ships lit up the dark expanse like a twisted display of fireworks. The alien fleet was starting to fracture. The first few ships had already been lost or severely damaged. The once proud Armada now staggered under the relentless assault from the Valhalla. The human ship moved with uncanny precision, striking without warning and slipping away before the aliens could retaliate. Each shot from the Valhalla found its mark, exploiting weaknesses in the alien designs. The humans were not following any predictable strategy. They were adapting and evolving mid-fight in ways the aliens could not match. The Valhalla had no intention of retreating or backing down from the fight. It had been forged in the fires of war, and its crew had fought countless battles together. They knew their ship inside and out. Every creak of the hull, every whir of the engines was like a second heartbeat to them. They had learned to fight not just as individuals, but as a unit moving in perfect synchrony, responding to each other's actions without a second thought. It was a brutal style of combat, one rooted in survival, and it was paying off. On the bridge, the alien commanders could feel the shift in momentum. Their once unshakable confidence was beginning to erode. The human ship was a nightmare to face. It was relentless, it was unpredictable, and worst of all, it was winning. The fear that had begun to creep into their thoughts was now taking root, spreading through their ranks as more ships fell or were forced to retreat. One of the alien ships tried to regroup with another to create a stronger formation, but the Valhalla anticipated it and moved to intercept, launching another devastating barrage that tore through their shields in seconds. The alien ships were scrambling, trying to adapt to the human tactics, but it was too late. Every move they made seemed to play into the hands of the Valhalla. Each time they attempted to retaliate, the human ship was already gone, slipping behind another target or evading fire with a precision that made no sense. How could these humans fight this way? They were supposed to be outmatched, outclassed by every measure of power, but instead they were turning the tide of battle one ship at a time. Captain Kane stood firm at the helm, her voice calm and steady as she gave orders to her crew. She knew the fight wasn't over yet, but every victory, every alien ship torn apart or forced to retreat, gave her crew more strength. She could feel their energy in the air, the adrenaline and determination that had driven them to survive all those years ago, during humanity's darkest days. It was the same fire that burned within them now. The aliens were realizing too late that the human will to fight was a force they couldn't counter. They had assumed that superior numbers and technology would win the day, but they had never fought a species like this. The humans didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought for survival. They fought to protect their homes, their families, their future, and that was a power the aliens could never understand. As the battle wore on, more of the alien fleet began to falter. They began to retreat, not because they were afraid of dying, but because they were beginning to understand that their victory was no longer certain. And with that realization came the doubt that began to spread among their ranks. What had once been an unstoppable force was now just another enemy to be reckoned with. As the hours dragged on, and the battle raged across the cold expanse of space, the once proud alien Armada found itself in disarray. Their flagship was severely damaged, its shields barely holding together. The alien fleet was now a shadow of its former self, as more and more of their ships fell one by one. The remaining vessels scattered into different formations, trying to regroup and reorganize. But it was too late. The Valhalla had already dealt the first fatal blow, and now the human ship was everywhere. It was a specter of destruction, slipping between their ranks, picking them apart with brutal efficiency. The alien commanders were shaken. They had never encountered anything like this before. This wasn't just a battle. This was a lesson in human resilience, a lesson they had not been prepared to learn. With each alien ship that fell, the sense of defeat spread further through the ranks. It wasn't just the firepower or the tactics that were throwing them off. It was the ferocity of the human crew, the sheer determination that refused to break or bend under the weight of their superior numbers. The aliens had underestimated the power of the human spirit, and now they were paying for it. One of the alien leaders slammed a fist onto the console in frustration. He had seen countless battles and faced adversaries that had once seemed impossible to defeat, but this was different. There was no fear in the humans' eyes, no panic, no surrender. They fought as though this fight was more than just about survival. They fought like they had something to prove, and that was something the alien commanders couldn't understand. They sent another transmission to the Valhalla, this one desperate and laced with thinly veiled threats. "You will regret this." The alien voice crackled through the communications channel. "We will not be defeated by a single ship." But the reply from Captain Kane was as calm and unyielding as ever. "You already have," she said without hesitation. "You underestimated us, and now you're paying the price." The alien commanders fell silent for a moment. Her words hit harder than any weapon they had fired. Their pride had been their downfall. They had assumed that the humans would crumble in the face of overwhelming force, But instead they had fought back with an unrelenting will that turned the tide of the battle. They had failed to recognize the true strength of humanity not in their technology or their fleets, but in the will to survive. As the Valhalla continued its assault, alien ships tried to flee, but it was too late. The damage had been done. The human ships' weapons were too powerful and too precise. The remaining alien ships tried to break through the human defenses, but with every attempt they were shot down piece by piece. The human warship moved like a shadow in the chaos of space, cutting down anything that dared to challenge it. The alien fleet had lost all cohesion now. They were scattered and retreating without direction. The Valhalla moved in pursuit, picking off ships one by one until there was nothing left but silence. The battlefield was littered with the wreckage of what had once been a formidable armada, now reduced to floating debris. Captain Kane stood silently on the bridge of the Valhalla. As she watched the alien fleet collapse, she felt no joy, no triumph, only the cold satisfaction of knowing they had survived again. Humanity had faced the impossible and had made it their own. And as the stars in the distance shimmered like distant memories, Captain Kane allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. This battle wasn't just a victory for the Valhalla or its crew, it was a victory for humanity, for every person who had ever been told they were too small, too weak to stand against the odds. The remaining alien ships were broken, scattered, and desperate. Their once cohesive fleet had dissolved into chaos, each vessel attempting to flee, but the Valhalla was relentless. Its pursuit was like that of a predator closing in on its wounded prey. It moved through the debris of the battlefield with surgical precision, picking off the remaining ships one by one. The alien fleet had never known such a defeat, not in their history, not in their deepest, darkest moments. They had never been driven to this point. On the bridge of the Valhalla, Captain Kane stood with her hand steady on the controls. She could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of the final strike. It was almost over. They had held their ground, and now the enemy was on the verge of annihilation. Her crew was exhausted, but there was no room for rest. They had fought too hard to falter now. Every member of the crew knew that the final moments of this battle were approaching, and they would not allow the enemy to escape. The alien commanders were scrambling. They had never experienced a retreat like this. Their forces were shattered and morale was in tatters. They had underestimated the humans from the start, thinking that their overwhelming numbers and superior technology would be enough to crush them. But now they understood that it was not technology or numbers that decided a battle. It was the heart and will of the soldiers fighting it, and the humans had more heart and will than they had ever anticipated. The alien fleet tried to regroup, sending out a last-ditch signal to attempt to re-establish communications with their commanders, but it was useless. The Valhalla had already severed their connections. Their systems had been crippled by the continuous barrage of human firepower. They had no choice but to flee, but even as they attempted to retreat, the Valhalla was there, pushing them further and further into the corner. Captain Kane issued the final orders to her crew. As they prepared to deliver the last blow to the alien forces, she knew that this would not only be the end of the battle, but a message to the rest of the galaxy, a message that humanity was not a species to be overlooked or crushed underfoot. Humanity was not a footnote in the universe's history. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Valhalla launched its final salvo, a barrage of missiles and energy beams that pierced through the remnants of the alien fleet. With stunning accuracy, the first alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its engines disintegrating as its hull was torn apart by the sheer force of the attack. One by one, the remaining ships were destroyed or driven into the depths of space, unable to escape the oncoming wrath. The alien armada was no more. The few ships that had survived were too damaged to continue their flight, and soon they would drift into the void, abandoned by their own fleet. The last of the alien forces had been wiped out. The Valhalla stood victorious over the ruins of what had once been an unstoppable force. On the bridge, the crew remained silent for a moment as the weight of the victory settled in. They had done it. They had faced the impossible and had emerged victorious. Captain Kane stood at the center of the room, her eyes scanning the screen in front of her, watching as the last remnants of the alien fleet were swallowed by the darkness of space. But there was no celebration, no cheer. There was only the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. This battle had been more than just a military victory. It had been a declaration humanity would not be conquered, humanity would not bow, and humanity would always find a way to survive. The aftermath of the battle was a somber silence that filled the void where moments before chaos had reigned. The alien Armada was no more scattered remnants of destroyed ships, drifted aimlessly through space. The Valhalla floated in the center of the battlefield, its hull battered but intact, its crew weary, but alive. The victory was theirs, but it came at a cost. There were no celebrations, no cheers, no grand speeches. Captain Lysandra Kane stood quietly on the bridge watching the debris that was once the alien fleet, a heavy weight settling over her as the reality of what had transpired fully sunk in. The crew had fought with everything they had, and now they were left with the ruins of what had been the largest invasion force the galaxy had ever seen. They had survived against the impossible, but victory felt distant, like an echo fading into the vastness of space. The Valhalla had proven that humanity was more than just survivors. They were fighters, they were a force that could not be wiped out so easily. But as the dust of battle settled, Captain Kane knew this victory was not the end of their story, it was just the beginning. In the months that followed, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. The Valhalla and its crew became legends in the eyes of the galaxy's other races. No longer seen as the underdogs, the humans had become symbols of defiant strength and resilience. The galaxy began to understand that humanity was not a species to be taken lightly. They were not some insignificant race in the farthest reaches of the universe. They had earned their place at the table. The Valhalla returned to Earth, the battered but victorious warship, its crew hailed as heroes. But Captain Kane knew that their fight was far from over. The victory over the alien Armada had sent a clear message to every race in the galaxy that humanity would not bow to anyone, but it had also created new enemies and new challenges. The victory might have shattered the alien fleet, but it had also sparked a new era of tension across the galaxy. The Valhalla would never be the same ship it had been when it first left Earth. It had been forged in the fires of war and had carried humanity's hope on its shoulders for far too long. It would carry the scars of this battle for the rest of its existence, a reminder of what they had overcome, but also a reminder of what lay ahead. As Captain Kane stood on the bridge looking out at the stars, she knew the galaxy was a far more dangerous place. Now humanity had become a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy's other powers would take note of this. But she also knew that humanity's greatest strength was not in its weapons or its ships. It was in its ability to endure, to fight, to survive, even when all seemed lost. The Valhalla had taught them that lesson. The crew had taught her that lesson, and Captain Kane would carry that lesson with her always. No matter what came next, humanity had proved its worth, and they would not go quietly into the night. The galaxy would hear their voice now, and humanity would never again be the ones who were underestimated. And so, as the stars twinkled in the distance, the crew of the Valhalla prepared for the future, the unknown challenges, and the new threats that would come. But they knew one thing for sure: humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and they would never let that reputation fade.